gonna steal all side, ride me, baby. I ain't never gonna stop. Come on now, baby. Ride me straight to the top. Yeah, straight to the top.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
And we're back.
And we're back.
Yeah, bad ideas, good
stories.
Numero noof.
Yeah, number 9. Jesus.
Yep.
Man, these are picking up, getting a lot of feedback from people that they're liking the way it's going. And one that I got just recently that I thought was pretty funny, it's like, they're a lot different than they look.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Tattooed kind of like bikery punk rock guys that actually have different attitudes. Like one girl, actually girlfriend of a friend, said that her impression is that we might be like really rough around the edges, and the conversations that we're having weren't necessarily what she thought were going to be put on the table.
Intriguing.
I thought that was kind of
Oh,
interesting.
there's book by its cover business. Huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, people.
Well, all of our mutual prejudices are currently showing.
Yes, I do wear glasses. Yeah, so
Yeah.
therefore,
He's talking about how not rough around the edges he is.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
Pretty enlightened bunch.
it's like having letters behind my last name.
GLA. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Fucking, I don't really want to get anything great off the bat. What's new with you, man? I haven't
Not
seen
much.
you in a week.
Actually, yeah. Okay, so what's new with me in the last week? My girlfriend, partner, whatever you want to call her, went out of town. So I finished my hypnotherapy course. I got my diploma in professional hypnotherapy. Signed up for, what's it called? Clinical hypnotherapist course. Whether or not I'll be able to get certified in that is up in the air, just because I am not an official like psychotherapist or licensed practitioner, but I can still take this course, which is neat. So it's super legitimate. It's not just like some woo-ha online thing. My partner and I are...
Well, to be fair, though, I also feel you can learn lots of shit online. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
Well, it is
I think,
online.
I think there's too much fucking stigma around, like, you know, knowledge and, like, where you get it through, instead of just like, well, did I get the fucking knowledge or not? Did I get the things I needed, or do I have to go through this specific series of hoop jumps so you guys can fucking validate it and make sure you're like, well, you're up to here. Well, how about my ability? How about that? How about what I went to do and I'm doing now? Is that valid?
Well, it is an online course, but it's a legitimate one with like the proper hoops. There's a lot of hoo-ha, like half-ass courses online that you can just like do a few questions and boom, here's your bullshit
totally.
certification,
Yeah.
right? But this one's a little more legitimate. But I agree with you. You know, somebody I know, one guy, he said that the new model for hiring and for business isn't necessarily what is your education, it is what is your body of work. Show me your resume, or show me your, like, let's say I wanted to get into video games and stuff like that, and I'm like, here's my graphic design, here's my digital design, here's my body of work. They don't ask, well, who did you study under and what school did you go to so much. So
No, the who's your father syndrome. Yeah. Well, that's good. And that's what it should be. I mean, it's tough when you're first starting out then, because then it does kind of have to be what school did you go to and whatnot. And that's usually dictated by what family you're born into. But after you can kind of make a little bit of your own way, that's the only system that makes any sense, because constantly being, well, and it's not fair also to you if you're doing something in a different field than what your predecessor was, and all of a sudden it's like you're judged because of that, you know, because you didn't follow in the thing that they told you to.
on that specific,
And it's like, well, you got into this school because of who your father is, but now you're going to do this. Okay, well, now it's not valid, or it's whatever.
well, it's also changing now, where the narrative, and I know this word is unpopular right now because lots of people are misusing narrative, but the modern standard is it's shifting from that who is your father is to what makes you a marginalized individual. That gets you into these systems that previously were existing for a privileged few. Yeah. Now it's almost being to the point where if you're part of that privileged, no, it's we're putting more marginalized or you know, people that are on the outskirts of these systems. We're putting them in place. Yeah. So I think that's changing for better or worse. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's how anything balances out, right? You get going really far fucking one way, and then you got to go back the other way, and then okay, well, how do we get closer back to the middle, and then maybe we'll get a little bit better this time, and that's interesting too, because I wrote this down from one of the previous ones about how businesses have kind of become like the new monarchies, right? Like if you want to infiltrate a government in a country, or you want to have influence, you know, like you can politics, whatever, that's all valid. But realistically, if you're in an industry and you've got a big enough influence in that industry, well, then all of a sudden you can influence laws that are going to be towards that industry.
Other industries as well.
Fucking right,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then that gets to be, you almost have this like this monarchy like structure where it can be run by just a family. You can just pass up a family name, and you can still have the same kind of control and power over a people. And indirectly, you know, they're not the ones making the laws, but they're in what ways they influence the influencers. They fucking make sure these laws happen, right?
In the name of profit, and in your, well, it's a, like you said, a monarchy, you know, except it's an economic thing as opposed to, you know, handed down from, well, I guess that for those finances are handed down.
It was just
from
jewels
generation.
before, and now it's fucking ones and zeros in imaginary accounts.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too then, because if there is that paradigm shift where there's all these marginalized people are suddenly brought into the fold, well then maybe that becomes their systems become what runs it then, right? Instead of people who are born of privilege and then have this greed and weird affluence issues, somebody who doesn't see that, maybe they can actually change those to their functioning systems. Because, like, I mean, not all monarchies were fucking outrageous pieces of shit that just treated their
some
people
were really
terribly.
benevolent, and they wanted the best for their land and their people.
The core of the power structure is kind of fucked.
Not so
because
much
it
that they're
gives
giving
much
their
of-
shit up.
Well, right, yeah, they're like losing the gowns and the fucking crowns and shit.
Like, oh, here you guys go. Here, you guys all move into the cap. Nobody's doing that. They still want to be the monarchy,
Yeah.
but like,
well, and I feel like I'm a little naive sometimes because I still feel like we talk about this with AI, that I'm also like, but I mean, if you don't put ill intent into something, it's tough to get ill intent out of it. So somebody, even if it's a garbage system like a monarchy, but if you go into that and you participate in it with the best of intentions, you can still have a better outcome then, right? And like with AI, I'm like, well, I mean, if you don't program them to be shitty, how do they get shitty, right?
well, what is that saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Sure.
So if you give somebody power and they know that I can push this line to this degree and nothing's going to happen to me because of who I am, I can push this line to this degree. Well, shit, nothing's going to happen to me. Push this line, other people will be going to jail or being executed for them, but it's only a fine.
Yeah.
Then I can push this line and it's just a bigger fine. What am I really accountable for? Like, you got guys like Epstein or Trump or any of these like super rich dudes that figure that they are literally above the law because they are wealthy enough to have an army of lawyers that know the law that are willing to fight that battle, when the average young person that's been exploited by them is just a person who calls the cops. You know, it's like, what do I have against this army? Or
And the only thing that kills those viruses is fucking sunlight. You have to get that stuff out in the open. That's why Epstein was having such a hard time dodging his charges this time that he didn't in 2007, because it wasn't out all over the media. Everybody wasn't into it. The prosecutor that gave him his sweetheart deal in 2007 was this, what the fuck's his name here? Alex Acosta.
you just happen to have it written
Well,
down.
because I was thinking about this earlier,
This
and
is
I was
coming
like,
up,
because
brother.
it was kind of important. Well, I know somebody's going to talk about, eventually it's going to get around to this kind of stuff, and about how their influence is seen now. Because this is the kind of shit that people always said. If you're in a coffee row or in a bar somewhere and somebody's going, well, you know what they're doing? They're killing them, right? They're getting the prison guards out of there, and they're shutting the fucking lights off, and then they're killing them, and it's them, they, the, whatever this big
tinfoil
nameless
hat
fucking
shit.
thing is, right?
Yeah.
Now, these assholes are still doing it, but it's in a fucking information age where it's basically out in front of everybody. Within minutes of it's happening, there's video, there's fucking, somebody's got a report on it, you know, like, there's shit going out, so you can't keep this stuff hidden as long. So what happened with this fucking Alex Acosta, like, Trump actually gave him the fucking, what deal did he give him here now? Oh, fuck, this is going to annoy me. No. Acosta, like, he made him Secretary of Labor. That's what it was within his government. For like 2 years. He was
And that was
Secretary of
Epstein's
Government.
lawyer?
This was the prosecutor who was supposed to be prosecuting Epstein, who gave him the sweetheart deal that he had like 17 months of like of being in custody, but during the week he could go and be in his office all during the
And
working
he got
hours.
immunity for all of his homies.
Exactly.
And
Everyone else who was ever touched by this couldn't be charged from it. And at the time, everybody was like, this is outrageous. But the prosecutor was like, no, this is what we want.
This is
So this
fair.
guy that goes along with this ends up becoming the Secretary of Labor until people start finding out he was the prosecutor that gave Epstein this sweetheart deal. When it starts coming out that Epstein's caught again and it's a whole big thing, and people are going, why? How is he not in jail now? How did he get caught in 07 and nothing happened? Then they find out it's this guy was basically responsible for it, working in, I would have to say, in collusion with his defense, because I don't know how you get that sort of deal if you're not working for the defendant at that point.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have his job anymore. And I don't know what else is going to happen with him, because, I mean, this is how prosecution and stuff happens. It becomes public, and people go, okay, well, somebody's got to look into
It's
this,
the
right?
information age.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Well,
That's that cleansing sunlight, my friend.
5-10 years ago, we would have been those guys at the bar saying, you know what's really happening?
Yep.
But now there's a bunch of people that we could bounce ideas off of, and we can look at, like, well, these people over here, these people in California are
Holy
saying this.
fuck, Russ.
You're
One more
ruining
time.
everything,
One more
Russ.
fucking time.
I'm ashamed.
I'm going to pack your nose so tight.
You waited.
Wait a minute.
You're bringing me drugs.
But yeah, once upon a time, we would have been those guys at the bar, and they would have said, "Oh, those are those tinfoil hat guys." But now in the information age, where this stuff is declassified, and then you've got actual experts on Twitter that are like, lawyers and like real researchers with legitimate sources saying, "No, this is factual information.
Yeah.
You can't hide that anymore."
Yeah. And then there's real repercussions to that, because if it's all bullshit, that guy still has his job. Right? If it's just conjecture, lots of people just thought at the time, and it's like, no, they look into it and it's like, no, you got to scurry, bud. You can't be in the limelight anymore.
Well, there's also like this carries over to like the Me Too age, where it's like all of a sudden these people were talking about, hey, I was sexually harassed, I was sexually assaulted, I was sexually exploited by these people of power, and they need to be outed. You know what I mean? And I think that in this era of communication and of interconnected I guess voices of the people on the ground, it's harder and harder to control a narrative. But
because the truth eventually comes out, it becomes the overriding narrative. Well, there might be discrepancies on the outside of it, but the core of it will eventually come out, because it's what the bulk of people who understand the fucking situation are going to come to a consensus on. There's always something that is more truthful in the situation than isn't truthful, and that's usually what it fucking is. And a lot of times it's glaringly obvious, because a lot of times it's like, well, no, it can't be that on the nose. It can't just be that he had all this dirt and that his girlfriend was out of the country and they didn't think she was going to come back, and so they killed him and thought they got away with it, and now they got her now, Ghislaine.
I saw another meme, and it's like Jolene is reported as having a coronavirus, and I'm like, right? Oh no, it's
you know what I mean? Though?
It's preemptive. I'm like, she didn't kill herself.
Exactly.
We said it here first.
Yeah,
she didn't accidentally catch swine flu.
Yeah. No, it's craziness. Well, what's even crazier is that show that's on Netflix. That's like everybody knows. Everybody who had no idea about Epstein before has now watched this, and it's like, oh, okay, we know you're a monster.
Now, who is in your little black book?
And there's lots of big time names. Like, well, I mean, they're running down the top 10 list of people, and I mean, it's princes, it's former presidents, it's titans of industry.
It's the economic elite.
Yep.
And this goes back to my idea where these guys can push the line and figure they're invincible. Well, now they're not invincible.
Yep.
Now, I'm not all about...
Because there's sunlight on them. What changed? People know about it. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing real physical in the world changed. There wasn't a big veil that was lifted, and all of a sudden we can see these creatures for what they are. Everybody's been saying that the whole time. These guys are predatory animals. Now it's like, well, no, here we have the proof.
What we do in the shadows is
not even in the shadows of most of these assholes.
Well, now
they joke about it in public and fucking speeches.
Okay, have you seen? There's that Altered Carbon show on, and then on Netflix for those that haven't seen it.
What you watching?
Yeah, what you watching? But that talks about there's a group of people that have to live on the ground, and then there's the titans of industry that can be upgraded, and they've got the money to almost be immortal, and they literally live in the clouds. You need a flying vehicle to get to where they are, and their people on the earth are just struggling and biting and just grinding to survive. But then there's these
nibbling.
Yeah, whatever they got to do, selling this, selling that, Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy show. But that's it. Same thing with the idea of Elysium, the movie Elysium with Brad Pitt. He's living on ground, and the earth itself becomes a slum. But then up in Elysium is where the ultra rich can live, and they've got this paradise. So I'm thinking that we're almost stepping into that, or we're at a point where the people that are on the ground are starting to realize what people get away with. These titans of industry can actually get away with, and as that light is shone, will they be able to continue it? Will we still support the systems that they? That's a big thing.
Well, because I don't think everybody wants vengeance. I don't think everybody wants judgment and punishment for these people who have wronged. They just want to not continue, first off, and whatever the level of accountability that goes along with that is.
Well, criminal charges?
If that's what it is, that's what it is, because it's the same rules for everybody else. But, I feel like a lot of people feel like when this shift happens, they're like, oh, they want to tear down these people's mansions, and they want to take
somebody just put a guillotine outside Jeff Bezos' place. Yeah, they rolled it up, and there you go, just leaving this here for you, buddy, like French Revolution time.
And, I mean, that's a personal choice when people, in Jeff Bezos, you can't even compare the amount of wealth that guy has to anybody you can imagine. So, when someone like that doesn't make the conscious effort to go, you know what? billions is just too much for one person.
Plural.
Just too much for one person, right? You know, like maybe I gotta smear that around. You can argue with the jobs in Amazon, but then there's all sorts of exposés about how shittily he treats his employees and how poorly they're paid, and everybody's got fucking PTSD from serving overseas, and then they're coming back here and they're working in fucking Amazon warehouse and getting worse PTSD from fucking being
Oh, I didn't
there.
even hear about that.
Oh fuck, it's a whole nightmare. But I mean, that's all of the essential services that had to keep going during the COVID that are people paid a fucking slave wage to keep all the gears of this moving.
But they're heroes. They're heroes of capitalism, and that's they get a T-shirt that says that. They don't get paid more.
Before this, you walk in and you say you work as a janitor at the fucking hospital or some shit like that, and it's like, well, let's see if we can get a cosigner for you. Hey, now it's you're a hero.
But that's all you get is the name and a T-shirt.
Yeah, and
you don't get a raise.
That's always been my argument about that too with fucking billionaires, because I'm like there's no way that what they earn in a year should be that disproportionate for what the fuck everybody else does. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's no way what they do personally has that much more value than every other person around them also contributing. And they're actually, a lot of times they're working in construction, or they're working in manufacturing, or they're working in areas where you're actually making fucking, you can see the proof of their work. You get a guy like a Bezos sitting down at the end of the year. What'd you get done this year with your hands, bud?
Oh yeah.
You didn't push even a button. You didn't turn a switch. You didn't punch a clock.
You went to some meetings. You said yes,
everybody
no.
else you've ever met has always had to fucking do for their existence, right?
But those guys have armies of accountants and armies of lawyers, and they probably own accounting firms and own law firms, and their entire job is to keep this guy rich and to keep him from going to jail. Yeah. And that's what blows my mind. The average person, that's okay. I've said this for years, that there's an echelon that you have to. The average person doesn't know the ins and outs of accounting. We are kept ignorant of that stuff. We're not taught it in school. We're not taught it anywhere unless you go for specialized education, which is expensive in the first place, to understand how to shift money, how to play the stocks, the games, stuff like that. The average person, that's outside of their lexicon, their understanding. Same thing with legalese. We don't understand the law. We don't understand how to interpret the law, how to understand it, how to read it. So you need a specialized echelon of society in order to speak the language of this colonial structures, being economy and accounting and legalese. Well, that protects those people that have an investment in colonial structures. So you look at these indigenous people that have been just basically bulldozed, right? Well, intentionally, they never had access to lawyers, let alone accounting or anything that's going to, like buying a house or any of that stuff. We talked about that before. So that entire idea of having an army of lawyers and an army of accountants in order so you don't have to pay taxes, but it's legal. Well, why is it legal? Because you've got an army of lawyers in your lobbying group. You also pay off lobbyists to make sure that this stuff is legal to maintain. You're securing your own power.
And that's that monarchy fucking structure.
Yes, that's all they're doing is securing their own power.
And you can hand it down through your bloodline if you so choose. So.
Well, man, it's like if I lived in a place and I made it the rule that I could sit with a Nerf gun and shoot you in the face, and you say, hey, I don't like that Nerf gun in my face. Hey, it's my rules. That's legal. Well, I'm going to hit you for that. No, you can't do that. That's illegal, but I could shoot you with this Nerf gun some more. Well, who made those rules? They're my rules. You know what I mean? Do you want to complain? Go through, here's a book of things that you have to do in order to complain about it. Well, I haven't read this book. I'm still shooting you in the face with the Nerf gun.
Yeah.
Sorry.
While you're trying to learn. Yep.
Thanks. I appreciate this system.
That's kind of how it's designed, right? So you have to deal with real physical struggle in the real world,
but you
navigate
can't
their
leave my
fucking
house.
Imaginary system.
That's the other element.
Yeah.
You can't leave my house.
You don't ever get a chance to change the rules. I'm not going to die. I'm not going anywhere. These are what the fucking rules are. And if anything, even if it doesn't look like me in a few years, it's going to be somebody else who does basically the same shit.
Yes, you might be able to, well, like, back to the macro, you can run for office, you could change the systems, but how much can you really get into the law books to change the legislation that these motherfuckers put in place to protect themselves? And to change the laws that were put in place to protect the system.
Yep.
Like, so we're saying, okay, well, paying taxes and paying a mortgage and being under the thumb of credit companies or banking systems and being under the thumb of the legal system, that's just how it is. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, cool. That's because that's how we've grown up. We've never known anything different. Now, nobody ever gets to the point, well, how do we change those? We're going to have to work inside the system to change the system. The system was designed not to change. It was meant to stay the same to benefit the people that those systems do. Whether it's white supremacy, patriarchy, or these billionaire elites now, they don't want that system to change. And they're going to give you the illusion that through running for office, or proper channels, you're going to be able to do it. But it's so bogged down by red tape and bureaucracy. I've been through it, trying to fight the city on the adult service licensing. Fuck that. There's 12 people you have to convince that, like, man, these are straight girls that just want a job, like they do it well. Nobody's getting hurt. Kids aren't being exploited. You got to relax. No, blue-haired old ladies won't vote for me if I let this happen. So that's it. They don't give a shit. They're just trying to secure their own power.
Yeah, and that's kind of the core problem with politics in general right now, right? It's not about what's the policy that's going to improve the betterment of everyone. It's how do I keep my base happy? How do I keep my core happy? How do I
job?
Hey, that's it, right? How to keep my job? I think mandatory limits on all levels of government should exist. There shouldn't be any of these fucking senators that can be in there for 40 or 50 years. That's insanity, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's and to me, in my mind, that's how political service used to be. It used to be like military. Like you'd go, you do your fucking service. You went, you did something already. You learned how the fucking world worked. You learned how to run a business. You learned how shit kind of happened. And now you can help your fucking community because you built enough that you can take 4 years off and go and do this thing that's going to represent the people in your area. You know what I mean?
God forbid you actually understood what is involved with these things.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't fucking Kanye West deciding to run for fucking president.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh my God.
Let me see the paperwork.
Well, man, okay. I'd like to believe, and I get it. I have these friends of mine. They identify as communists. I don't necessarily agree with all their stuff, but ethically, we're pretty close in the same boat, right? And I told them one day, I really believe in a meritocracy. The idea that those people with the best skills for the job are put in the positions to do the job because they're the best, and it doesn't matter what you're the best at. And these people, they seem to think that a meritocracy was only white men got put in positions of power. I'm like, no. Because in some positions of power, or some positions, you're going to need people that are empathetic and nurturing and gentle and kind more than that stoic masculine energy. So the people that have those skills should be put in those roles, whether it's healthcare or whatever, nurturing, counseling. But then...
Professional wrestling.
Yeah, all that stuff. But then you're going to have those people that need to be stoic, and they need to be able to compartmentalize emotions, and they need to be stronger or potentially vicious. There's those people that need those jobs, right? So put the best people in line for the job. Trump, Kanye West, are neither of those people. That is the opposite of meritocracy. That is the degeneration, disintegration of anything resembling merit, making executive decisions for a nation. That's fucked. And people...
That's fucked.
People can say whatever they want about Trudeau. He's not my favorite, but he's also not the worst out of the batch. And he also came up with Pierre Trudeau as his father. He's familiar with the ins and outs of the entire system. You could say, he was a drama teacher, or he had blackface in one period when he had a momentary lapse of judgment. He's not the worst I've seen. You know what I mean? He's not. And he's not a religious fanatic. He's trying to be considerate to different cultures. He's trying to find the balance, between environmentalism and industry. These things I think are necessary, that nuance for running
absolutely.
shit.
I couldn't agree more. But my thing also is he still would never have been prime minister if his father wasn't.
That's a good point.
There's no
That's
way based on just the merits of his work. I mean, that he lived within that world, that's cool and all, but that's, again, what'd your daddy do?
That's actually, I never even considered that, and that's super valid.
And
if it wasn't for his namesake,
that's right. You can't argue listing his accomplishments in life that is be the most qualified, right? You know what I mean?
That's very, very true. I never even
I'm not saying
considered
he's doing a shitty job. I'm not saying he's a garbage person. I totally agree that on the opposite side, you've got lots of guys that have only even perhaps maybe worked at a local SGI and pretended they were insurance dealers, but actually just sold fucking license plates over the counter. So there's levels to this. I'm
a license plate salesman, and I tell people I'm an insurance broker.
Yeah.
But then there's
look it up.
Cheer. But what was it? Jagmeet Singh. I like him. I like his platforms. I like his approach. He's when his hair's down, he looks like a crazy Game of Thrones warrior. All of these things are good things, for a leader of a nation. And I told my one friend who's NDP that party is underestimating the inherent racism in Canada. They will not vote for somebody who they don't think represents them.
Well, did you just see the most recent fucking stunt? It wasn't recent, like within the last 2 weeks, though.
No.
It's like they're trying to make him apologize for making these other assholes apologize for being racist.
Oh yeah, when he called the guy out as being a racist, and they kicked him out of Parliament.
Apologize, and I'm like, are you fucking guys like? It couldn't be more obvious and in the fucking face how wrong you are right now, and you're stuck. Well, he should have to apologize. A little decorum for our fucking archaic bullshit systems. Why aren't you paying more respect to this? Because it's garbage and you're full of shit. That's fucking why.
Well, and he's exactly. He's been on the receiving end of it. It's not the first rodeo for him to recognize racism.
To him how fucking racism works, right? Mm-hmm. Fuck off. Keeping it light, keeping it moving.
So yeah, this what's it called? We were talking about it a little bit earlier. This Animist class that we're taking. B and I, that's another one thing that we jumped on recently, is learning about animism, for lack of a better term, is kind of post-colonial shamanic awareness, where paying attention to the interconnection of ecological systems, recognizing plants as being conscious, recognizing water as potentially having a personhood, rocks, mountains, sky, all of that stuff, and engaging with your environment in a respectful, relational way, right?
And balanced.
Yes.
I think balance is like a big part of that.
Yeah, and just making space so you're not just that dominant influence that's completely bulldozing everything. And the idea of colonialism is sort of like the antithesis of that. Like, we do what we want because we are bigger and stronger, right? And we were talking about that, where I tend to take up space in conversations, in environments, blah, 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 blah. So I'm doing my best to back up and give you space to talk a bit more.
I'm fine.
Okay, good. Anyway, so now back. No, so that's a thing where we're holding space for people, is if they just sometimes even need to be quiet, you just sit in that awkward silence and you let them be silent. That doesn't always have to be filled with something. Although this is a podcast, so it's kind of a given that we should.
Yeah, the lack of silence is usually ideal.
Fill the space.
Fill the goddamn void.
Is this thing even on?
Yeah, fuck, I hope not.
We'll just do it we're gonna do 5 minutes of uninterrupted silence.
But I know I like that. I like that idea, because it's, to me, when you started talking about it, it's like a balance of energies. Then even when you were mentioned earlier about you have to kill to exist, everything at some level does. Whereas I think it's like you have to transform energy to exist. You know what I mean? And it's you can consider it killing. You consider because fucking plants grow from transforming sunlight into energy. You know what I mean? There's no death in that, but that's a transformation of energy put into something else, right? So then we start to see all of it as that, but some of it
there are nutrients taken from the soil in order to create the carbon that builds the new matter, right? Yep. So that is a taking and a giving. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. There's a balance and there's a transformance to that, but I think it doesn't have to always be seen as like consumption. You know what I mean? Because it's, to me, when it's consumption, it's like, well, then it's gone. It's been used up. Where it's like, well, no, it's just transformed into something else.
That's
and
valid.
There's ways to do that have almost no impact or little impact on your environment, or fucking absolutely catastrophic impact on your environment. And stuff like eating meat, a lot of times does lean towards that other end. Even if you just look at the basic concept of you're taking something else that's already converting energy and doing all this fucking thing, and then you're taking that and then you're making that yours. When you could kind of skip the middleman and just eat same shit there. And I'm not saying it's got to be grass and stuff, but like when people are like, you can't get enough nutrients, cows get fucking enormous, man. Moose get huge. They ain't eating beavers out there.
Oh, that gorilla is getting protein somehow.
Right? That's what I'm saying, right? Like, it's just
genetics.
Change your idea, change how you look at those sort of things, and then go like, well, what's the least destructive way I could do this?
Well, I like to think of the animist approach, which is kind of challenging me because I'm a vegan, is that life feeds off of life. And the goal is to be conscious, and even if it's non-consensual, to look at it and not say, I'm sorry about this thing, but thank you for what is necessary for me to survive.
I fucking see, and that's what I feel like I've come to, where I'm like, I don't, again, I'm being a shitty example of this right now anyways, but I didn't fucking eat before I got in here. But
7-Eleven chicken. Did you do the official sacred thank you?
Yeah. Well, you know what? And that's something that, actually, talking to my little brother about hunting, that's what he got into. Because for him, it was just murder for years. Like, just kill everything you can, whatever you can.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where he's kind of like, well, no, I do want to be more in fucking tune with what I'm doing, and I do want to make it more of a conscious experience of balance with fucking nature. And it got to a point where he was like, when I'm hunting, a lot of times, like, I do the same technique I would, to go and hunt something and track it or lure it or whatever I'm going to do. But I feel like now, as long as I'm coming with the right intention, it's like nature's giving me that animal. It's like I'm not tracking it down and like sussing it out and scaring it out of its environment. It's like, no, I've come out here, I've existed how I've had to, I've done the work I need to let it give me this now. And then I'm going to use that. And I was like, that's a fucking interesting way of looking at it. Like I don't need to fucking give somebody a 20-minute fucking chit chat about why you shouldn't eat meat for this. If they're going to come to me like that and be like, well, this is why I do it and how I do it. I'm like, okay, cool. I have nothing to say about that. That's your journey, man. Like that's a conscious effort you put in, and it might evolve. You might continue to go down that path and then go, well, wait a minute. Why am I out here even stealing this fucking animal from it when I could just let it exist and let something else have it or someone else have it and then they get to that same experience, like...
We had our conference call today, and one thing that came up in the conference call was the colonial influence on our mentality, which is very much a binary idea, right, wrong. There's nuances removed from that colonial mentality. It's our way or the highway. And this also comes into rigid thought structures where if I consider, like, I'm a vegan, I don't eat meat, but you can be whoever you want. Now, if you feel that my ideas make more sense to you than where you're at, feel free to adopt them. But like, that's a very profoundly colonial idea if I push my morality onto you. Coming from a
even if it's well-intentioned.
A hierarchical
even if it's only going to make their life better and everything else you're interacting with. I'm like, no, you're going to be feel guilty about this, all these other benefits, but if you're still pushing it on them, it's like, well, fucking let them have their journey.
If you accept Christ and get onto the reserves,
exactly.
See, it's coming from a hierarchical standpoint of like, I'm a superior individual and you are a lesser than. I addressed this online a little while ago because I'm friends with a lot of like activist people, and they're using this term garbage people for the right wing people they disagree with.
For
the right wing people they disagree with. So if, let's say, J.K. Rowling has an anti-trans tweet, they're like, she's a garbage person and needs to be canceled. And I'm like, who else used the term subhuman? The Untermensch.
This is the opposite end of the spectrum. But again, that's that balance again, right? You got people that are using it for that real ugly reason on the other side. And the other one's like, well, no, we're doing it as a social justice reason. I'm saying these horrible, ugly, terrible. I'm doxing somebody. I'm doing these shitty things that I wouldn't want done to me, but it's for a righteous cause.
That I wouldn't want done to me. Yep. And I think that's what really the pivotal point on this shit. It's like, why would I do to you what I wouldn't want done to me?
To teach you a lesson, though. Because you got to learn, and
because I'm coming from a standpoint of higher moral self-righteousness, and you're a lower person.
I've seen your flaws, and that's all I can see. And you don't need to know. You don't know what I know, so I got to explain it to you.
But have you really looked at your own flaws? Like that's what gets me.
And as soon as you do, then all of a sudden you can't do that, because that's something that changed with me over time. Is like I don't know how many times I've gotten pissed off about something, and I'm gonna teach you a fucking lesson about this, And now again, I'm like, I can't teach anybody anything. I can't, like just through the experience I've had. I'm like,
would I appreciate that same lesson in the same way I'm approaching it with?
Try. Well, it's cliche, but try to be the example you want to see, right? And actually, one that reminds me of this, I don't know if I told this on here, but I remember this was a few years ago when I was trying to be more conscious of how I was treating people and shit like that. I was in the fucking co-op hardware store in some small town, and I was getting some copper tube cut. And anyways, the kid in the hardware department never run a tube cutter before. Doesn't know how to do it. He's looking at it, can't figure it out. He's going to get a hacksaw. And I'm like, well, did anybody ever show you how to run that thing? And he's like, oh, no, I just kind of started here. I was like, okay, cool, give it to me. So I show him how it works, get it all set up, give it a couple twists, and I said, okay, you can finish it off now. And he figures out how it all works and gets it done. He gives it to me. He's like, oh, geez, thanks, I really appreciate that. And I was like, well, somebody showed me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, nobody, how do you just fucking, first off, that's piss poor management. Just let this kid sit there and not
to get the job.
Yeah. But that's, I didn't figure that out on my own. I didn't just pick one up and go, this is how this works, Like, somebody fucking showed me it sometime. And I also had flashbacks to, like, picturing my old man in a similar situation where he'd just be like, what kind of brain dead fucking dummy doesn't know how to do this, And I'm like, don't be that guy, don't be that guy, don't be that guy. What's the opposite of that guy? Here, let me show you how to fucking do this real quick. I'm not going to be a dickhead about it and talk down to you. I'm just going to, here's how this works. Now we're cool.
So with these people that are like so anti-racist, and even that language, anti-racist, as opposed to like pro-unity or pro-like collectivism, they're anti-racist. They're not out there trying to educate people. They're out there trying to attack people.
Trying to be the opposite.
Yeah, and the idea of like fighting fire with fire. There was this guy. Okay, there's a situation. This guy is at a protest. Okay, these guys were going to go and tear down a statue. The patriots with their guns show up and they start doing a counter protest to stop people from tearing down the statue. One of the Patriot guys with the guns starts trying to make his way through a crowd. Some woman gets in his face, and he shoves the woman. I'm not sure if she was a person of color, but whatever. He shoves the woman. All of a sudden, the crowd starts attacking this guy. They're like, we're gonna fucking kill you. They're hitting him in the head with skateboards and stuff like this. They're running after him, hitting him and swinging stuff at him. Literally on the video, you hear, "We're gonna fucking kill you. We're gonna fucking kill you." So finally, he gets knocked to the ground. They start kicking him, and he gets up and he goes pop, pop, pop into two of the people that were attacking him. He got shot the one guy twice.
Let's hold on. Two of the people that he baited into a fucking confrontation, and then he used his weapon against after he brought it there. The fucking purpose of doing that. Well, he didn't bring a handgun tucked into his belt to deter anybody. You bring a fucking assault rifle if you want to scare somebody.
Well, he had both.
You know what I'm saying? But that's the whole thing of this, right? Like, it's like,
but this is an escalation.
That's how this fucking thing works, and that's why those people on that side play these imaginary fucking games when they're out playing paintball or doing whatever they do, and thinking how I smoke this guy and that. Then all of a sudden it becomes real, and you act like a piece of shit in front of a group of people who don't think like you and got no issue with putting hands on you for doing something like that. And now you're like, "Oh, I gotta do this. Look what you made me do." You brought yourself to this by living in this imaginary world till you got to a point where you had to. Now you have to live with the repercussions of it. And it's ugly and gross, and that's what it is. It's not a fucking video game. This is real. Like,
see, I agree with that 100%. But there's also the angle on this that everybody's playing the escalation game, and nobody is being like water and backing the fuck off. Nobody is... So, guy pushes somebody. These guys start hitting guy, threatening his life. This guy responds to a threat on his life and a physical attack with a lethal force threat with lethal force. Yeah. So somebody ends up getting gut shot and maybe dying. I don't know if they died. Now that was just, all of that could be avoided at any step of the way by not allowing that escalation to happen. If you come up to me and you're angry, I've got a fucking issue with you, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I've got an issue with you. And you're like, yeah. And then we start escalating as opposed to me finally saying, okay, what's your issue with me? Yeah. And allowing you, eating your aggression a little bit.
That's fine. Like, I mean, because you can have the argument, you can have a discussion that turns into that, you can figure out how to do that. But it's when it becomes physical, when you're breaking that boundary, when you're no longer going, hey, this is a discussion, this is an argument, this is an ugly situation. Now it's life or death. You've touched me, all of a sudden I'm like, holy fuck, I'm threatened. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to come back. It's almost no way to get back from that once that happens, right? And
So now we have groups of 200 armed people of color, all in black, with their own AR-15s marching on the streets to stand against armed patriots in the streets of the USA. Because everybody's willing to escalate it to this almost Civil War-esque kind of...
And I'm not saying even willing, that this is the imaginary world these guys have lived in for years. As soon as they started being able to collect the fucking assault rifles and the gear and the backpacks and go and play their war games on the weekend, I'm just saying, go and play those games on the weekends, this is what they've been playing for, right? And now they finally get a chance to go and do it, and they're like, well, let's go keep playing the game. Let's see how far we can push it. It's like you said, it's not money this time. It's not going up gradually throughout it. It's like, no, I can do this really quick. I can go from this imaginary world to the real world right now, and that's what I thought I wanted. I don't think, man, it's a dangerous culture.
Well, right, when you put a guillotine out of Jeff Bezos's mansion, what are you going to do when you literally see a head roll?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, that is the step between these idealized fantasies about these things and the reality of these things. So all of these people...
Why isn't that almost just a bigger metaphor for, like, how we live right now? Like, you think about everybody who's, like, an internet celebrity right now. Like, they're imaginary. Those are characters that they are building and then only putting on the screen for 15 minutes or an hour or whatever the fuck it is. And then they're not those fucking people, and people think that's what they are, and that's, oh, aren't they so beautiful? And you see them in reality, oh, you're one of these garbage piles. You know what I mean? Like, big fucking surprise.
See, okay, so back to that entire idea of garbage people. I think we need to get rid of it, and I think we need communication. You know what I mean? Because the truth of this situation is nuanced between these hard right and these hard left people. The fact that police do a very hard job and they're doing their best, and there are some scumbags and they do need to be accountable, doesn't mean that every cop out there is like a predator waiting for the opportunity to shoot a black guy.
That's true. That's not saying everyone's a predator, but there is a bigger systematic
I think that needs to be
systematically silenced.
Yes, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And that's when you become complacent. And that when it becomes, well, look at, I mean, I just signed up because everybody else did it. It was my graduating class. We all figured it would be a laugh to get into the Army. Then they gave us uniforms. They thought we were cool. I buried mine after the war. I didn't think anybody was going to find it. I wasn't really pick a fucking wrong side of the history party, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's, but going along with it without analyzing it, then it becomes on you, and then you are part of that.
Well, and we'd also have to deal with the fact that on The other side, there are certain marginalized groups that actually have, they are being victimized to a greater degree by these systems of authority, but we also have to look at the fact that they are also systematically and statistically more likely to commit violent crime against these cops that are worried for their life. So that's the nuance. It's not such a binary A or B thing. We have to meet in the middle. And you know what it really boils down to in my books? Ownership of our own toxicity, ownership of our own shit. And everybody likes to play the "it's not me, it's you" game. Yeah, I'm not doing anything wrong. You are the oppressive influence here. And the cops are like, well, we're not doing anything wrong. You guys are the criminal guys here. Everybody should say, yeah, I fucked up. And you know what? I'm sorry about what I did. Yeah. And now if both sides said I fucked up and I'm sorry for what I did, how can we heal this? Yeah. That's progress. But right now we don't see that. We see, not me, it's you. Well, really, it's not me, it's you. Look at this, look at that.
That's just another imaginary social thing that we have to do. That, again, nothing real in the world changed, and all of a sudden those barriers start to evaporate. Like, that's like I was saying that Prince Harry talking about colonialism with the royal family. Yeah, and he was like,
I'm really interested in hearing that.
Well, I don't have the full quote right on me, but it was basically that if we admit like what colonialism was and the negative done by it, everybody wins.
Yes.
Everybody who wants to have that recognized, everybody who wants to have a voice gets to have that, and you get to go, you know what, we fucked up. You know what? And you get to look like the bigger person, or the bigger idea, I guess, if it's the monarchy.
So he's the guy that moved to Canada, right? So maybe that's part of his whole trip. He's like, I'm kind of taking a step back from being royalty. Yep. He's still rich as fuck, but he's moving to a country, and he's like, I'm just a rich guy. I'm no longer royal. Well, maybe he's always going to be royal. I don't know the details of it. Yeah. But owning what colonialism actually did is the first step in saying, I'm sorry for the abuse that I caused.
Yeah. And again, that's all it is, though. Like, that's what he's saying, basically. It's like, it doesn't cost you anything to do this. There's no shoveling you have to do because of this.
There might be reparations associated.
Well, maybe, but one day. But to the initial fucking, like, look, we fucked up, we're sorry. Okay, then whatever else happens from there. But I guess that also kind of ties in, like you were talking about, like, this cancel culture. I mean, we have to start realizing there's levels to this, right? Like, you can't just fucking... You fucked up once and it's a bit, okay, that's it, you're done forever, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be, we have to get back to gray areas again, because everything's so fucking black and white right now, and everybody is very angry about it. It's really hard to have conversations, because it's like, if it's not someone who, and even if you value someone's opinion, if they give you one that's differing enough,
you're suddenly enemies?
Well, right? And you have to start going, well, I think you're lying to me, and well, maybe you got fake news or fucking whatever. And it's like, well, fuck, dude. Any other time we talk about this kind of stuff, you know, you're on board, but all of a sudden when it's something that's contrary to what you think, you're like, well, no, you must be lying to me.
Well, okay. I think we can take it away from the news, and we can boil it down to principle levels. We've got the principle that we are all in the same boat. The principle that we all want peace, that we all want a better world. Yeah. Then we can talk about how can we get there. You know, all this other divisive stuff, he said, she said, you know, you guys are criminals, you guys are abusive. All of that stuff, let's erase it, and let's get down to a principle core level of, you have selfishness, greed, I want, I, me, and mine, and you've got us, you know, altruism. Hey, why don't we all live together the best we can? Yeah. These are like really core principles.
What's tough is like, you would think that most people, that's what they want. You ultimately want peace. You ultimately want satisfaction. But there are lots of people that, over the span of their life, they may have said that's what they wanted, but at the place where they are right now, or they are 10 years ago, or 10 years from now, they don't want any of that. They want to burn it down. They hate where they've been put into, or they hate the fucking thing they've been raised in, or whatever it is, and they don't want that peaceful world. They want to see everybody else suffer as much as they do.
I think
that's tough, because if you catch them in those moments, well, how fuck do you get those guys on board? And they may at one point in their life get there, or at one time were, but it's like, it's fucking hard when they're in that
trauma. Yeah. If you've been traumatized enough, you're past even knowing that you're traumatized. You just want your pain to be expressed on the outer world. Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways you have cultures that have been traumatized. You've had people, like, not individuals, but like people that have been traumatized, and they've got all this toxic stuff. Now, how do we heal that? You know, that's, I think, the big deal. And
well, a lot of times it's really voices being heard. Mm-hmm. Sunlight on the fucking thing. People going, yeah, okay, it happened. You know what? It fucking happened. Fucked up. It was wrong, or whatever. You know, that's what people want. Well, not everybody wants hands cut off.
Before ownership,
Yeah.
we actually need to listen to the voices of the people that are like, hey, this happened to me. Whether it's Me Too or Black Lives Matter or Idle No More or any of these groups that are talking about, this is my experience as being on the receiving end of your bullshit.
Yeah.
Cool. Please let us listen.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking like white dudes.
Yeah.
Okay, as white dudes, let's listen to Me Too, Idle No More, Black Lives Matter, and hear these people what they're saying. Because when you actually listen to it, and you can kind of maybe get that little bit of empathy going in your heart, saying, "What if I was in this situation and I was the little person with a huge sexually, aggressive individual coming at me? Holy fuck, I don't want that to happen." Watch more jail movies. You want to be the little guy in jail? No, nobody wants to be the little guy in jail.
Dynamic works. Watch a little Oz.
Right? Or Idle No More or Black Lives Matter. Imagine being on the receiving end as a white guy, and you might get a little inkling of empathy for these experiences.
Well, and if you do, and then you realize that you have been treated like that in the past, you don't use that as a fucking excuse to continue to perpetuate that. Then you go, oh no, I can connect with you and realize that, and then instead of throwing it back at you and going, well, there was 9 white guys killed by cops last week, it's like, yeah, that's a fucking problem. Why are you looking at? It's not the
That's a
color even in that
problem, too.
situation. That's showing that it's continuing to be the same issue and it's on a different color. That shows that the issue fucking exists. This is just the most blatant, obvious example of it. You know.
People think that just because somebody says Black Lives Matter, that's obviously an attack against them as like...
It's putting them above. That's what they think. They think it's putting them above all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, to people that have always been superior, equality looks like oppression. And I think that's a really weird one. And you can look at it with women wanting to have a voice in equal measure to a male's voice.
How about we live in 2020 and women still don't get paid the fucking same as men do for a job? We live as in the fucking future as we've ever been, and women do not get paid the same as men.
Right now we're in the future more than we...
fucking
Right now we're more in the future.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah.
But, well, paid the same, or if a woman says the exact same sentence as a man, she's considered what's a word? Uppity bitch. You're an uppity bitch for saying
What's
that to
the
me.
word for that?
That one,
Uppity, yeah.
But she's saying the exact same thing that if your bro told you, you'd be like, oh, I guess. You know what I mean? And that is a double standard, straight up. If a guy has a gentle boundary, you're like, okay, man, I respect you. If a woman has a gentle boundary, well, what's her problem?
Yeah.
She's not respecting my...
That's a pretty gentle boundary. You know what I mean?
I could keep pushing it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? They don't have respect for it.
Depending on the situation, And I think as we unpack this stuff and we talk about it, I think nobody's expecting us to be perfect.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you can't get rid of
You know what I was just thinking right then also is I would like to clarify is this is not passing judgment upon every other person listening that this is connecting with right now. If this connects for you, I don't know you. I don't see you. I don't know what the fuck.
You're a garbage person.
It's us. What the people we're talking about right now are us. This is the shit that we've had. Because, I mean, I can't fucking speak for anybody else's experience, but I know the kind of shit I've been through. And do not feel like this is judgment upon you by admitting this or going, yeah, that fucking connects with me. Go, okay. You can continue past in life and do that and still try to fucking, in what ways you know how to make amends for it. Try to be better in those fucking options.
Transparency time, like I'm the first
Turn the cameras off.
Oh God, Pat's transparency moments. So I'm the first to admit that I went through a long period of my life where I was furious. I was racist. You know what I mean? I was preoccupied with self-protection, and I got in violent situations. I was probably really pushy with my sexuality before I ended up finding the kink community, which gave me an avenue to express that dominant aspect of my life. So all of these things make sense to me now when I'm listening to these voices.
And because you've come to terms, because you've got to those points and been like, well, fuck. I don't like how this part of me is, but how do I take the parts of it that I do want and I do like, and how do I make that work? How do I make that part of my fucking life?
In a lot of ways, I thought that shit was normal. And I didn't see it as even being toxic because I didn't consider the consequences of what I did and how it would affect the people around me. You know what I mean? I like some people had raised concerns about issues of consent once or twice with me, and I'm like, holy fuck. So I had to unpack that. I had to pull it out, and as ugly as that was, open that up and say, did I do something wrong? Yeah. And things went sideways, and I need to own that, and I made amends when I could, where I could, if it wasn't going to cause more pain by doing that. The same thing is in 12-step programs. Same thing with the racism. When I was a racist guy, even Jose, who was on the podcast a few episodes ago, he was intimidated to engage with me because he had heard about who I was before he met me. Yeah. So what I had done when I was 15, 16, 17, and the jokes I had made wearing screwdriver shirts later on, still emotionally hurt him and affected him, even though he wouldn't use the word hurt so much.
Yeah.
He's like,
hey, and isn't that kind of like a crazy fucking example of some sort of privilege too? Like the son of revolutionaries, he's 6'4" or whatever, hey, and he's scared of you,
yeah, that
because
fucking midget in the
some
corner.
shit he'd heard about
Yeah,
when you were 15 or
exactly.
16. Hey,
Well, fuck. I knew this good friend of mine. Her family runs like a Vietnamese restaurant, and she pointed out her dad is, you don't offend the white people. That's the standard operating procedure for the restaurant that they run, is because these people make or break your business. And if you treat them bad, that whole, what everybody's concerned about, the Karens and the Yelp, well, that's not new.
Yeah, right.
Where they're just finally being called on their shit, because that person can put a business out if it's a minority run business. You know what I mean? So shitty now that as white men...
Yeah, with businesses like that, you get two bad months, all of a sudden you're fucking closing the doors.
Yeah, or if somebody decides to boycott because something went wrong, they you know, anything went wrong. You know, they didn't speak English good enough.
That's it, right? It could be just how you were perceived to be treated. I don't like their attitude.
So now,
I thought they made me wait too long. They put two people in front of me, and I don't know who they were, but I've been waiting here for 20 minutes already. Oh, fuck it.
Now, men are in the position where a woman says, "What you did was wrong," and we're like, "Oh, blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
No, blah 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 blah. Yeah. Anything to actually stop ourselves from looking at that and saying, "Yeah, maybe my attitudes were fucked up. How can I be different in the future?" You can't go back in time and undo or not do what has happened. And I think this is the same with anything, whether it's a government, colonialism, or individuals. You can't go back and undo it. You can say, "I own that I fucked up. How can I make this better? I can't make you feel better, but I want you to know that I regret what happened." And that's all you can really do. Now, if you choose to engage with me and educate me, cool. If not, I'll be over here just working on myself. You know, and nobody has to do this, but if they do, they're probably going to get a leg up on what's going to happen in the next 15, 20 years.
Right.
Culture's changing fast.
It'll make you be more what you picture you are. You know what I mean? Because the more self-analyzation you do, you know what I mean?
Nobody thinks they're a bad guy.
No, fuck, nobody does, right? Till you look at it real hard and you're like, fuck, did I get that fat? This is a really high definition mirror. I was sure I was skinnier than this, right? I was sure I was less shitty than this, right? Yeah. But then as soon as you see it, well, then, okay, well, now you can fix it. You've been walking around with your ass hanging out the whole fucking time. Now you know. Now you can fix it, right?
Yeah.
And so then to say that, to wipe away those shitty experiences is almost like, well, no, that's not putting value in what I have now because of it. You know, like I have to have those to fucking get that, I guess. I had to anyways. Hopefully listening to someone else have those experiences makes you avoid that, you know? But again, like we talked about previously, I was like, that's why religion doesn't work. You know, you can't just tell people this is what's going to happen. They got to see it. They got to feel it.
And you know what's very interesting is that these stoic, tough men are actually cavemen lunks that largely need to be handled with kid gloves and large amounts of compassion so they don't go beat the living shit out of themselves forever once they realize they've done the wrong thing. It reminds me of like a big old pit bull that finally realizes that eating shit isn't a good thing to do. And like he's just going to sit in a corner of the room with his nose stuck in the corner forever because... You have to handle it with kid gloves. You have to be gentle with truth. And unfortunately, nobody likes that hard truth. I had this online. I asked this question. I'm like, which is more important, truth or compassion? Because if you're too compassionate with zero truth, you're letting people live in delusion. Oh, yeah, whatever you like, honey. Yeah, whatever little delusion you like. Nobody's going to fix that, blah, blah, blah. Compassion without truth. Truth without compassion is fucking brutal. It's like, it'll destroy somebody if they're not ready to handle it. Yeah. So one person pointed out, well, that's like saying, do you prefer your lungs or your kidneys? Both are equally, you know, important to the whole system.
To be a functioning person.
Yeah, you need
both. Again, that's living in those worlds of absolutes. Right? If you can only have one or the other, yeah, okay, cool. If you can only have one or the other, but we can all try and have both, right? We can because we get the choice. We can do it.
Now, I'd like to think it's a spectrum because there's a lot of people that would really prefer to live with like 80% compassion, 20% truth. And then there's a people that live with 20% compassion and 80% truth. And I used to think, well, you know me, I was a hard truth guy, brutal truth guy. And then I realized when I had to look at
I sometimes thought you were autistic, honestly.
No, that makes sense. I'm on there. Yeah, that's very possible. I'm not.
That's the way you would dump it.
Who knows what kind of like pathology is on me? But spectrums. There's all kinds of spectrums. But and I realized that I resonated when I asked that question. I got a whole bunch of feedback, and you know, obviously, what I expected is all my like far left hippie kind of friends were like, compassion is so important. And my more right wing, hardline kind of friends, like real capitalists, were like, truth is more important. And so this is like a real like balance game where it's like, wow, these people that like that hard, statistical, cold, unemotional truth are usually falling on the right wing spectrum. You know what I mean? They're very hard on themselves. They're very pragmatic. They struggle towards,
hard on everybody else, hard on themselves.
Yeah. And then the people that are more compassionate are really the, whatever, flows. They're not really, they're happy whether or not they have anything. They're that hippie vibe, right? And I'm in the middle because I fluctuate now. Like I'm really working towards trying to find a balance between those. I don't want to hurt people. Yeah. But I'm not going to sugarcoat things so you can just slide into whatever delusions you want to slide into. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, this reality that we're living in, there's a lot of people that want that avoidance of truth. They really...
Well, it goes back to the red pill, blue pill shit, right?
Yeah.
Do you want the uncomfortable truth, or do you want to stay comfortable in none?
Can we get a comfortable truth? How do, like, okay.
Maybe that's the point, though. You know what I mean? Like, maybe everything worthwhile in life is hidden on the side of something shitty. Maybe every struggle is that's where the benefit is, right? Like if going to the gym was easy, right?
Everybody would be great shit.
Exactly. You have to do that. Education, reading books isn't fucking easy. And anything that gives you value in life basically
takes work.
Fucking right. And generally, the more of myself I put into it, the more value I find comes out of it. And it's not always financial, but it's like, that's how I define fucking value, I guess.
Something I find very interesting is like a lot of people are really cool with dumping that hard truth on others, but they don't want that hard truth dumped on themselves. Yeah. And it's like, I want to be compassionately handled when you tell me what I'm doing wrong, but I'm gonna fucking tell you what you're doing. and that's what burned my ass, I think, in a couple of my nervous breakdown situations where I had to give myself that hard, unrelenting, unflinching this is you, man, like it or not, fuck you, and I'm like, okay, eat it.
Is that what I've been doing to people?
Yeah. What is that? I think that's like a family stabbing the serial killer. That's what this feels like. So yeah, I think that these are important things for us to go through. And I think, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, as a culture, that's actually happening. This is what we're seeing, where like the white patriot males like struggling for their dominance, and everybody else like, no, not gonna fly, man. That system's done, right?
Yeah.
Let's try and bring a new one in. But how tight will the male? How tight?
It's like a violent that you pointed at
me. How tight will, or how far will the male ego go to keep itself intact? People will cheat, lie, fight, kill, die to protect their ego boundaries. Especially that male ego, right? So
they'll shoot up a whole school full of people to protect your ego.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what I'm afraid of in the States when everybody starts marching with their rifles, because
I'm afraid of everywhere.
This is the systems that are starting to have to be examined that really don't want to be examined. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, you want to talk about balances, that's going to be a really hard fucking swing when you're totally into the dark about it, and then all of a sudden the light's on what you are, and you go, oh, fuck, what? Well, that's a very extreme response. A lot of people spin in depression. People go into substance abuse. People kill themselves. Like, that's how far that goes. Or they go on a fucking shooting rampage. Or they come out of it a much better person because they get to that fucking deep, dark fucking hole, and then they go, all right, I got to climb back out.
I'd like to think our conversations, and like maybe I'm putting way too much depth on what we're talking about. I'd like to think our conversations in that a person can listen to what we're talking about and consider it at home in their own fucking comfort of their cell phone world, and say, well, maybe we're full of shit. Maybe we're bullshit. Maybe we're talking out our ass, and you don't have to take a single thing we're talking about seriously. Or maybe we plant a seed, and that allows them to do it gently, to grow gently, as opposed to a huge smashing into their worldview.
For me, this feels a little bit like a collaboration, like the Bastards. Like you're doing what you do, and if it connects with what somebody else is doing, and it helps them, and it even if it just inspires them, you know what I mean? And they go, fuck, you know what? That kind of sparks something with me that I'm going to get into this. That's the fucking coolest shit in the world to me. That's why I made music. That's why you want to have that connection with people, right? And that's why I fucking enjoy doing this, because if people get talking about shit and all of a sudden they read something or they just look at it with a different perspective, that's the coolest fucking thing, because I'm always happy when that happens to me. I'm always excited when all of a sudden it's like a fucking little thing clicks and I get the hair on my neck stand up a little bit and go, holy fuck, I never thought about it like that before.
Yeah.
Fuck, really? How did you get there? How did you come to see that? And then they tell you and you're like, oh, well, that's how I fucking see it now. Again, it was like there was a veil over that thing that I could not see. And now it's been lifted, and I can totally understand it, and I love that. But unfortunately, a lot of times it happens with ugly shit.
Well, and you know what? Guys like us, or guys like we were, rarely are exposed to alternative viewpoints from a position of somebody that they can relate to. You know, like a lot of the stuff that I've read comes from like black feminist authors. You know, when's a guy like one of us going to say, oh, I'm reading this black feminist author's book? Like, it's just not going to fucking happen. And especially when somebody who doesn't speak the language, doesn't share a history, doesn't share traumas, is coming at them saying, blah, 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 you need to change. Well, yeah, maybe we do need to change, but we need to discuss how we're changing. And we need to discuss amongst ourselves the best way of doing that, as opposed to, I'd say, other people coming in and saying, this is what you need to do. I like the idea of us saying, this is what we need to do.
And again, that's not how you would want to treat anybody.
Well, I don't want to go into the black community and start telling them how to heal trauma, or the indigenous community, or tell women how to do feminism.
Right.
So, but we're really being...
I'd love to have that conversation, though. You know what I mean? Like how does your version of those things work? You know what I mean? Because I'd love to understand. You know, like, and it's just, honestly, and that's even just for my opinion. That isn't even anything else. It's not even anything bigger than that. It's just like, oh, just so I know, you know?
Well, you know, but maybe it's that male ego thing, but my back gets up when somebody says, you're doing it wrong. And, and you know, like, they're not coming from my vantage point as being a man growing up in a society of men and trying to navigate how much emotion am I allowed to feel and still be safe.
Well,
you know,
that's the insane thing about this, right? Is like, our fathers wouldn't have had these types of conversations. You know what I mean? Like it'd have been a much. They just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be the deep dive, the exposure to that, unless wow, man, it'd be 2 or 3 bottles of whiskey deep, maybe. You know what I mean?
That's what you had to do to be able to
tears and fucking the flickering light of a fucking fire. You know what I mean? Like,
and you know what? And they think that's not even real. That's just the booze talking, because you need to have that.
Well, I'm not really like that.
You need to have that much to unlock that shit.
You just needed all that alcohol, like fucking rinse it all off until you could see it underneath. I got to douse it in about 26 ounces of booze before I can get to it.
Why do you need to be 6 beers deep before the I love you mans start coming out?
Right.
You know, and me and my brother, we joke about it. Like, it's a gauge on how drunk our buddies are before the I love you mans start coming out. Oh, you got to the I love you mans. And
my thing's usually penises.
Oh, okay.
How drunk are they? As soon as the penises come out.
See, I'm not the naked dude, but that's just me. So yeah, I think this entire deal of
penises.
You know, where how do we be better men? And like I love discussing with feminists, and I love discussing with people of color, and I love those conversations, because even though I'm a damaged white boy, I'm coming from an attitude of being open to hear what you say. Now, I do have a even harder time being a damaged white boy, working on being a damaged white boy, listening to guys that are balls deep in their damage and they don't see there's anything problem with it. You know what I mean? The guys that are like, fuck that bitch, or, you know, like, fuck those guys, they're a different color than me, and they just don't want to examine it, because I can't engage with that anymore. I'm having to be around a group of people.
Well, and that's your deficiency, Pat.
Is it?
That you can't exist around people like that because it's not compatible with what you want to do.
I spent the better part of 40 years doing it, though.
Yeah. No, again, I'm being hard on you with this, but to me, that's the way I'm trying to look at this shit, right? It's like, it's not about me fixing them. It's like, well, how do I exist with this if I have to? If I don't need this in part of my life, well, then I'm not going to make it part of my world.
I can laugh at a racist joke like a motherfucker, but...
Oh, no, and I'm not talking about blending in. You know what I mean? I'm like, I still want to be comfortable and have people understand what I am, and still know, like, you're not going to be comfortable saying that shit around me because I am going to say something, and maybe that's the level that we exist at, you know? But that's, you know, that's the work we have to do, I think. Because I think if we're super enlightened and we're on the highest level, you can exist with anybody, you can figure out how to interact with anybody, you can figure out how to be compassionate and get to that because I can't see the Dalai Lama not figuring out how to be able to talk to anybody he ever wanted to. You know what I mean? Like I can't see fucking Gandhi not figuring out how to make connections with anybody he ever wanted to, right?
See, okay.
But they're in a different level than me because I still got to work through fucking shit. I've still got stereotypes I've got to work through. I find myself, I often adopt the fucking accent of people when I'm talking to them.
I do that all the
and
time.
I don't know if that's if what the fuck that is exactly, but I think it's just because I'm uncomfortable and I just don't know how to talk.
Maybe
and
you are in
wow,
Montreal
okay.
and you speak like this?
Fuck, I don't know.
Like,
Man. You know, but so it's just one little thing that I noticed with myself recently. That I'm like, I guess that's something you got to work on, Dusty. You know, like
or is that a chameleon skill? Is it a skill? Or
okay,
is it like,
yeah. Was that me trying to make them comfortable subconsciously?
Or you feeling,
again,
I kind of belong here. I am not an outsider.
Sure, yeah. Talk like everybody else.
A little bit.
More.
You know.
Okay.
Well, right.
Again, this is why it's good to talk about this shit because I was thinking of it as a negative thing where I was like, I was deficient. I was not just being my true self. I'd adjusted by being around this person and only because of how they spoke. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But now that you're saying that, I'm like, well, no, maybe that's what you're fucking supposed to do. Maybe you should.
I think that might be it.
To become more comfortable amongst the group. And I just hope that no one ever sees that as like, you know,
it's not all of a sudden you're adopting a Cree accent or
or
any of that stuff.
It's
like
too much right there.
Is it? Oh, there was. Did I suddenly go racist? Was I could be talking with any accent. Man. If I go to England, I could be picking up those little like subtle like cues there. It doesn't matter where you are. In the Philippines, you kind of get that sing-songy song.
And I think it's I think there's some scenarios where that shit's okay. You're telling a story. And you're mimicking someone else, and you're doing it reasonably. You know what I mean? You're doing it reasonably. You're not like, yes, there was this Asian guy, and he was all insert terrible Asian accent. You know what I mean? But you know, if there's something funny about the way they talk for the situation,
funny about the way
like they mispronounce a word, and that's what the punchline of the joke was. That was what the funny situation was. That kind of shit. It's kind of like, okay, that's fine. But if you're just creating a character and then doing the voice, and then it's still not a funny story, it's not entertaining. It's like, it's just that just sucks and is shitty. You know, like there's no value in that. But it's really tough because actually like one of my favorite programs is Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Just had more than a few of their episodes removed for the use of blackface.
Oh really?
But I mean, if you see the episodes, it's some of the funniest. It's like people even trying to fucking make the argument that you got to get rid of Robert Downey Jr. with his blackface in Tropic Thunder when it's like
that was the point of him wearing it.
It's the joke inside the joke inside the fucking joke, and it's so obvious. It's no one was trying to be subversive about it and be like, hey, no, we're trying to pass this guy off as a black guy. It was the most obvious fucking thing you've ever seen, right?
People that have never seen the movie are the ones that have the issue with it.
Well, that's what I think, and I think that if they'd seen real use of blackface in the past, you'd go, oh, that's fucked. That's a fucked thing to do. What he's doing here is pointing out how fucked that is. And if you don't get that, well, then maybe you need to do your fucking history homework.
Well, are we going to say the same thing about Clayton Bigsby, Dave Chappelle?
There we go,
you know, the
right?
white or the Black Klansman.
One of the funniest fucking bits of all time,
and it's valid as shit because that was a commentary on racism, and Chappelle made that very clear. Yep. Part of the reason he left the whole industry is because he got the impression that these people are all standing around watching me do my little dance, and they're not getting the commentary. And he's like,
man.
"Fuck this! You're missing the point. I'm not just here to put a nickel in my ass and watch me dance." So he
put a nickel in my ass and watch me dance. That should be our album title.
So so he ditched for a while, but he came back, and his new stand-up is it's got social commentary, but it's got legitimate social commentary, which isn't always politically correct. And I think that's valid. But you know, I guess he's a person of color, so he's allowed to say certain things. So I guess the people with more marginalized oppression points, are allowed to call him on that. Which is kind of a fucked up environment. Like, is this a competition? Right? You know, who's at the top of the marginalized, oppressed period?
And with shit like that too. Again, it's just he's just talking, and people are maybe changing their opinions on something based on that. What is the fucking damage in that? What is the danger in that? If it's true and it's of value, and they change their fucking opinion, isn't that how we evolve? Isn't that how we get better?
Well, it depends on. It's such a slippery slope because the things I'd like to say, I don't have the right words to say out loud a lot of times. But I find...
is it because you just have a hard time articulating it, or is it you would have to use uncomfortable words to make your point?
I have a hard time articulating it
fair enough,
where I wouldn't be villainized as being,
I don't want to jump all over you
problematic, phobic,
fair
whatever.
Enough. Well, yeah, because I was just going to say, again, too, I feel like using some terms in the point of telling a story, or it's a joke, but not in the sense of like it's a defamatory toward. I don't know. I'm trying to fucking say this properly, but I mean, like, I can think of stories off the top of my head that I want to tell that I think are fucking hilarious, but because there's certain words that are incorporated with it, even though the person telling me the story, it was used negatively against them, the retelling of that fucking story could very well just get me in shit because be like, I can't believe you said that, and I'll even tiptoe around it. I don't mind saying, I use the N word or the F word or whatever. Like, that's fine to get through it. It just kind of takes away from the punch of it a lot of times because you're like, well, no, like, this is what fucking horrible people do say in the world, and you're retelling a story and you can find humor in the way somebody was terrible. That's even almost the best. You know what I mean? When you can laugh about somebody being a real piece of shit.
In comedy, 100%.
That's my favorite stuff. And it's
in
really,
comedy,
really hard to walk right up to the line, though. Because I don't want to hurt or offend anybody, but I would hope that someone who would be hurt or offended by that language would actually see the humor in it and then get the bigger laugh and go like, holy fuck, that's crazy.
Well, as guys like us, we could probably make jokes about the old white racists. My grandpa used to be like this, and oh my god, can you imagine being like this? I'm sure he had robes in his fucking closet. He was so bad. Like, that kind of joke, it's politically incorrect, but you're talking about your own environment. Yeah. I don't like I don't like living in a culture right now where anything that you say that might be slightly taboo and you want to put a topic of conversation on the table to discuss, as soon as you say those words, you are suddenly labeled as a fascist, a racist, a phobic, or whatever the case may be, and you are blacklisted. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you're saying. As soon as you question the validity of somebody's claim, you're like, you're automatically my enemy, you're automatically blacklisted, you're automatically a fascist.
Yeah. And we've seen that backfire with Jussie Smollett. That actor from what the fucking show was he on?
Jussie Smollett. I don't remember what show.
I can't remember. Some big show down with Billions or some shit like that. Anyways, I don't know what the fuck he was on. But he claimed that he was hate crimed. Oh. And it was a total fucking setup. And it was
just to was publicity or what? What did he do it for?
Maybe he's crazy. I don't know what the fucking problem was. But anyways, that's an example of that kind of going the opposite direction where everybody jumped on it right away and can't believe this happened, can't believe this happened. You're like, yeah, you can't believe it happened because it didn't fucking happen, And that's a very extreme circumstance because the problem with that is too then, so when shit like that does happen the next week, people go, oh, we got another Smollett on our hands. And
Crying wolf.
Exactly. Devalidates it from fucking anybody else.
So I saw a video and it was on, it was shared by, I think, Immortal Technique. He's like one of my favorite rappers. And he's like, check out this Karen, right? And the situation was, there was a person of color. I think he was like a black guy, if I'm allowed to say that. I don't know. But either way, he was convinced that this woman cut him off and then gave him the finger, and he claimed that she had called him the N-word. And he followed her home. He followed her home, hopped out of his car, and she's trying to get into the underground garage, and he's filming her. He's like, you called me this, you did this, you did this. She's like, no, I fucking didn't. And she's in tears. And he's like filming her license plate. You did this, and I know you did this. And she's bawling. She's like, I didn't. Why are you trying to hurt me? Why are you attacking me like this? And my impression, she knew exactly what was happening. This guy is using his newfound power to make her a fucking villain, regardless of that the proof behind what she actually did. She's now been tried and found guilty in the court of public opinion, and he's outing her and doxing her. Now, the entire culture of this doxing is the perceived victim can now just put you on the trial of public opinion,
again,
regardless of the history.
Pendulum swing of the fucking sunlight on the situation, right? You can have that information and get it out about everybody, but now you can get it out about fucking everybody for anything if you want to.
So now,
sorry, to be fair, when I watched that video, I do feel like when I watched it, that woman was absolutely putting on a show at that time. How she got down on her knees and was down like, no, you're attacking.
She was covering her license plate.
But even like it's I don't know, man. I didn't feel like she was being victimized in that situation.
She seemed like she was a little like emotionally imbalanced. Yeah. But at the same time,
it probably was when she cut him off and gave him the finger and called him the N-word.
If she did that.
Well,
but
here's the thing, though.
And this is my thing.
What's the benefit for this guy to pick a random person, though, to track them down, to put them on the
internet? He's suddenly viral.
I know,
he's
but how
suddenly
is he,
the victim.
Though? He's in the background. He's shooting it. You know what I mean? She's the one.
He's got another Karen that did some horrible injustice towards him that he can crucify. Yeah. And that system of doxing, she will lose her job. She will lose her house. She can no longer feed her family. You are literally attacking a person's livelihood. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe you aren't dragging them down the street and tar and feathering them, but you are lynching them in the public You were doing this regardless
Wow.
of due process.
It's a fine line, though. Fine
Due
line.
process.
Lynching to outing someone on the internet.
No, it's not.
Well, one's very physical in the real
There
world.
was a doxing where this cop.
I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
this cop, he outs this local politician for doing this thing. Her neighbor, wrong address, somebody broke into the house and raped her fucking neighbor because she was doxed. These are threats. These are straight up threats against these people's livelihoods. That chick who harassed the one guy down in Central Park for she was walking her dog. She lost her fucking job. She lost her livelihood. She's lost the ability to get work because she is now that bitch that did this thing. Regardless of the court, regardless of the proof behind it.
Here's the opposite side to that, though, Pat. With that specific situation, we'll talk about that for a second. Is if it went the way she wanted it to.
Oh yeah. I agree.
He would have at least been arrested, maybe even beaten or killed if it had gone to the full thing, because that's what she was trying to do.
I agree.
So, to be held accountable for trying to put those actions into motion, I'm not saying it's not overboard. I'm just saying it's about fucking time that people can be held accountable for these. Again, it's extreme. This is much too far when you're doing that kind of fucking shit and you're losing your whole livelihood over that. But at the same time, he could have lost his life.
No,
he could have just as easily got into an argument with them, and all of a sudden he had legitimate charges against him for resisting arrest. You know, like that's the slippery slope with this. Because again, it comes back to almost like. So what if I take your
name and I put a hashtag Me Too?
I know.
This guy harassed me.
I know. That's what I'm saying, though, Pat. Because so here's the core of all of this. Even with the thing with the statue guy earlier, if you're coming at it from a point of negativity at all to begin with, the escalation that comes out of that is on you. You know what I mean? Like she started that down that fucking road.
Now that's
It's unfortunate that this is what it got to, but these are the possible real life repercussions of your actions if you start doing these things. It sucks. It's terrible. It shouldn't happen, but that's how these fucking things work.
Cool. So she lost her job. She can't get another job. She can't make house payments. She ends up, I don't know, moving to mom and dad's house. She loses her car.
Sure.
She
This is
can't
hypothetically
make
you're talking about?
Hypothetically.
Okay.
No, though she did lose her job.
Yeah, but she hadn't lost her house or anything that you know.
Well, who knows?
She couldn't find a different job.
Well, I don't think she could find a job when you're fired
continue
because
with
you're
your
an
hypothetical.
online racist.
Yeah.
So Me Too suddenly pops up next to your name. Some girl says, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah, Me Too. This guy did this thing," and everybody rallies behind her. Okay, cool. So somebody says, "Oh, this actually happened to a tattooer in town where he lost his job for being a member of the Proud Boys." Okay, cool. I don't necessarily agree with the Proud Boys, but either way, he loses his livelihood for being doxxed. So your name pops up next to Me Too. Is there any onus of proof on these individuals, or are we just running with accusations and then you can make it viral? This woman's some good meaning social justice warrior runs the woman who's crying's license plate that she's crying and trying to cover up, and she loses her job and she loses her livelihood and she can no longer afford her mortgage or her car payments. That is a legitimate attack on her safety because this one person decides that they're going to make an example out of her because she is a symbol of the larger oppression of white supremacy. That's bullshit, and it's removing nuance from the situation, and it's removing due process.
I do feel like you've inflated it a little bit by saying, like, making her the face of white supremacy.
That's what this guy is. The fact that term Karen is a blanket statement for any white woman that complains about something. And this guy literally followed her home, confronted her when she's trying to pull into her driveway. She's like, "Why are you attacking me?" It wasn't a physical attack. It was, "Why are you filming me? I've done nothing wrong." And this guy suddenly just says, "You called me the N-word." That's all it takes. And now she is the perpetrator of this crime. And guess what? All it takes is, the place that she's employed by doesn't want their name associated with her. Bye-bye. This cancel culture is fucking dangerous. And all it would take 10 years ago, you could have canceled me straight up.
You keep pointing out people that are like kind of victims of cancel culture as well. Cancel culture gets predators also. Cancel culture gets a lot of really fucking bad people. That's what I'm saying, right? So that's tough. That sucks. That's unfortunate. These are the times we're living in. It's unfortunate for the Karens of the world right now. They have to deal with these sort of things.
It's unfortunate that sometimes innocent people get shot by police.
I know, but that's been happening for a really long time, though. You know what I mean? This is just a new thing for them that they have to deal with when it's unfortunate that they have their power taken away from them a little bit because they can't just call the cops on people and go, "See, I told you this is what I was going to do."
So you're saying that that's the only situation.
I'm not saying that's the only situation. I'm just saying this is an example of that where now that paradigm shift. Now they're being treated like the people that they have been treating.
Yeah, well,
in those circumstances, and it's unfortunate, but it's no different. It's again,
right.
Pat, that's no different than the kid who gets arrested for being suspicious while he's walking to go get gum, and now he's got a rap sheet because of what happened happened with the cop because he's just who he is. It's the same thing, absolutely,
not right.
but it's on the opposite side of the spectrum
And
now.
that's not right.
And I agree, but these are the repercussions of living like that. This is what you get when you fucking let that exist. If you can't handle this, then you should do something about fixing this, I guess, so then we don't have to go that fucking far that way, if that makes any sense.
When you say but, it negates everything that came before it. You can say, this isn't right, but it's happening. Well, that just means it's happening. And it negates the fact that this isn't right.
How's that negated?
It does. It negates. You're saying, this is happening. I'm not racist, but this is a racist thing.
No,
this
that's
isn't
not what
right.
I did. That's
no,
not what I did. Not,
when you
no,
use
no,
the
no,
word
no, no,
but.
no. It does not. It does not. You can absolutely agree that something is terrible, but it is happening. You can change it. I can want to change it. I think it should change. I think it shouldn't happen in the first place. But it is happening as the repercussions of the actions on this other side. Even though it had nothing to do with them, maybe they're never their lifetime, they never did it. But that same system that created this issue, this is what's happening to this portion of it now, and this is how it is. It's unfortunate, it's terrible, but I guess that's the growing pains we have to go through when these people still can't realize that black lives do matter. That's the balance to this kind of fucking thing.
Have you ever had a consent accusation?
Yes?
And how did it resolve itself?
How did it resolve itself?
What if you were raked over the coals as a result of that, regardless of due process?
Well, you absolutely know what my circumstance was with that.
Well, I'm talking about a hypothetical. No, because, all of us have skeletons in our closet and have made mistakes, regardless of the due process surrounding that stuff. And I think everybody should be guaranteed due process and balance. Balanced judgment.
I totally agree, but again, I'm just saying this is the pendulum swing. You continue to talk about hypotheticals though, because you're like, well, she could potentially lose her job, she could potentially lose her house. Okay, cool. That same scenario, those guys on the other end of that potentially lose their life.
Yes.
And that's all. But that's what's continued to happen until this point. That was never even an option before 10 years ago for these people to be called out and on video and on camera. That's just the shit that was just happening, right? So now this is the balance when the sunlight's on it.
So when you or me or anybody now loses our job or gets raked over the coals because of an accusation that doesn't need to be backed up, there you go, that's cool, that's the way it is.
You think that happens with every baseless accusation?
Am I saying every?
Well, Pat, you like to speak in broad generalizations.
I'm not doing it. I'm not.
Okay. So if it does, you're right. But here's the problem with that was, I think with those circumstances, there has to at least be a modicum of truth to it. Like, for example, with the comedian Chris D'Elia, right now he's going through a whole thing where they're accusing him of grooming underage fans because they found Snapchats that he sent to people or whatever, right? So this is the thing that's going to come out of this. Like, either it's going to be...
No, what does grooming mean? Like, oh, hey, we're new buddies, or, come to my show, here's some tickets.
Like he's trying to, warm them up until they're old enough. Or I don't know. It's fucked. It's not...
Because I've heard of grooming gangs in the States.
Same kind of idea. Child molesters do it all the time. Priests do it. School teachers do it. Everybody in positions of power does it when they want to. And so that's what he's going through right now, right? And if there's no truth to it, if there's no fact to it, if it's absolutely fucking baseless, then the truth is going to come out. It's going to fuck his life up for a while, but eventually maybe he's going to get back on track and he's going to have a career and everybody's going to go, geez, that was a shitty thing. Absolutely, maybe. But maybe he is grooming fucking children. Maybe there is some fucking truth to it. Then maybe you got this guy. And it's unfortunate and it's terrible and you can keep arguing these hypotheticals, what if it was me? But at the same time, if you don't have those circumstances in your past, how could it be you? How can you get there without those gray areas? How can it get to that where it's just totally, I've never met this person, I don't know them, and all of a sudden there's an accusation against me?
It's a possibility.
Rare. It is possible, but it's rare.
It is a possibility.
It's rare.
So how long ago did Kevin Spacey make the inappropriate move on his coworker there? What was it, 15, 16 years previous?
Kevin Spacey also
allegedly
got drunk and fucked a minor.
Oh, okay. So, I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah, no, he's a chicken hawk.
Okay. I don't know what chicken
hawk is. Older gay gentleman who preys upon young, maybe not even necessarily yet gay gentlemen.
Oh, really? That's what a chicken hawk is? Oh, okay.
I mean, it's an old school term, I guess.
Okay. So I didn't know that situation. Yeah. So if people can dig back,
looking for consensual
if they can dig back and say, once upon a time you said something, you did something, and we're going to hold you accountable today. Yeah. That's
Is it
cool.
gross enough? Is it worse enough? Is it horrible enough?
What if it isn't?
Then I guess that's unfortunate and it sucks, and that's going to be my journey that I'll have to go through to figure out how to get to the other side. But the idea of that arguing that we shouldn't do any of this to help protect me in case I do sometime, if any of the good this shit can do, fine, whatever. Then I guess I get caught up.
That's part of Dave Chappelle's stand-up. And he's like, oh, I got a joke. I'm going to do an impression, somewhere back in the time. I'm going to go and I'm going to dig and I'm going to find something you said or something that you did and I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to fucking put it on you. And guess who I am? I'm you people. And that doesn't make it fucking right.
I agree. I think
Because
it's
I
terrible.
remember 1960s McCarthyism. Are you now, or have you ever been, a member of the Communist Party?
Sure.
Because if you are no longer going to be working for this organization. You are no longer going to have access to media. You're no longer going to be able to work in Hollywood. Because that is the political narrative of that time.
Sure.
Now, with time, we look back on it and we say, what an oppressive regime. What an oppressive regime. And at the time, they thought what they were doing was morally right, and they were protecting the moral
but that was a
fabric.
governmental structure. This isn't just people on Twitter or Facebook putting up a video and then everybody else grabbing it and going, you know what, this is fucked. I'm tired of seeing people talk like this in public. Yeah, fuck this person. That's a different thing altogether.
Is it?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Because what if that person isn't necessarily doing that? But this person that's videotaping the situation wants it to be part of the narrative. They want that to be put out there. When a good meaning, here's another one that happened a while ago. A woman lives in a building. Cool. She's a single woman who happens to be white. Another gentleman tries to get in who happens to be colored. Okay? Or a person of color. She's like, do you live here? I'm opening the key. The guy's like, let me into the building. She's like, do you have a key? He's like, I live here. She's like, well, do you have a key? I don't know any apartment in Saskatoon that says, just come on in, just for the safety. Who cares if you live here or not? If I don't know you and you aren't my immediate neighbor and I don't know you live in this building, then I'm not going to let you in. Use your key if you have one. So he's like, I'm not going to use my key. You're doing this because you're racist. She's like, no, I'm doing it because I live here. So she's like, fine, you want to get in without a key? I want to know where you live. I'm going to follow you to your apartment. He's got his phone. He's like, you're doing this because you're a racist. You're a Karen. You're a Karen. The whole way up to his apartment. And she had to make public apologies because she's scared for her safety of letting a larger man into her building. It could have been a white guy. It could have been anybody.
It sounds unfair.
It does sound unfair.
Yeah.
Now, does she...
She's sad, though. Her feelings are hurt a bit.
No, she could be losing her apartment over this shit because she's trying to keep herself safe.
You're right.
But that pendulum's acceptable to you.
I'm not saying it's acceptable to me. I'm saying that's how nature works. I'm saying that's what we're dealing with. I'm saying that's how it is. I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think people should be racist. I don't think people should be sexist. I think women should make as much as men. I'm saying that's how it is.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate. And I think it's going to change. And I think we'll get there. And it's going to be a tough time for people that do get caught up in it. But again, the overall arching good of this is that the times where that doesn't end to the cops coming and shooting the guy,
So
that's the benefit. Someone's still alive to be unhappy.
You got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
I'm not making the rules, man.
No, is that what you're saying?
That's
You
how
gotta
this shit
break
works.
some eggs to
That's
make
what I
an
said
omelet.
earlier when I said you don't get anything worthwhile by getting it easily. You have to go through hard times to get something that's worthwhile. You have to do the work. Unfortunately, this might be our societal work where we have to do these things. We have to see these assholes come out and dox someone for no fucking reason other than they just thought they could get away with it. And then eventually we get to the point where we go, okay, well now the guy's doing the doxing and these situations are pieces of shit. And then we have to go further down the line till we eventually get to a balance, right? That's the whole point of this. It's always evolving. It's not done now. It's not like this is it and Karens are going to constantly be maligned for the rest of history. But to be fair, this is really the first time where they have been called out for shit they've been doing.
No, that's fair. I hear that. I
know
hear
what I
that.
mean?
And I'm not debating it. I'm just saying that the tactic right now isn't a healthy tactic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think doxing on either side is bullshit. I don't think that's what you do. But I think there's a difference between that and being held accountable for the things you do, especially out in public. You know, like a lot of these things, it's out in a grocery store and you're acting in a way that I'm like, how the fuck, you have to almost be an insane person to act like that in front of people.
Yes, there's
So there
tons
should
of
be
those
like,
examples.
There should be like fucking like social
Maybe
services intervene or some shit like that.
Maybe we're looking at the different angles of the same
I
situation.
think we are, honestly, because I feel like that one video you're talking about, I remember watching it and just being like, even if he's full of shit, she's acting like a lunatic and clearly did something wrong, because that's how a crazy person acts, not someone who's being victimized or attacked. That's what I remember thinking watching that.
And when I watched it, I saw a woman that didn't want to get doxxed, that knows where this is going as soon as the phone comes out and as soon as this guy starts saying, you called me the N-word.
And isn't that kind of like a dog that runs to the fucking corner when you come home because they know they pistol over everything? You know what I mean?
So.
At the same time, I'm like,
So.
fuck, dude, I didn't do it. You want to shoot my fucking license plate all over the internet? Go hard.
Yeah.
I have no problem telling everybody else that I didn't do this shit. You know what I mean? But I mean, that's my personality. Again,
I've also
I'm not
had to
scared of
deal
that shit.
with being dogpiled
Yeah.
for saying
I
the
get
wrong
it, man.
words.
I don't
For
think it's
asking
right.
the wrong
I feel like you think I'm attacking you over this. I'm not. I agree with you. This is fucked. I'm just saying, like, it's the reality of what we're going through. It's an uncomfortable reality of what we're going through right now, and it's going to be a growing pain that we're going to get through. It's just going to suck, and it's going to suck for people that maybe it shouldn't have. You are going to get a few people caught in the net that are like, fuck, I was just here existing. I didn't know, you know. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, no, this was wrong. This should be fucking out in the public. These people need to know this fucking daycare shouldn't be running anymore. Shit like that.
Yeah, that stuff's real.
You know what I mean?
But
That's
at
what
the
I'm saying. But
same
again,
time, these hard extremist, looking for a villain under every rock.
But you know that's such a small percentage of people, right?
No.
Yes, it is, Pat. You keep
think?
thinking it is because
Maybe
those are the
those
worlds you
circles
see.
that
Well, you even mentioned earlier. You said yours are very extreme a lot of times, even your social group. You know,
That's a possibility.
I think regular old everyday people are very much more in the middle, and they don't. Nobody wants to see someone get their justice by losing their fucking job and shit. But we all take a little bit of fucking comfort when we see somebody who acts like an asshole. And you know what? I was fucking behind that kind of person in the grocery store one time, and I'm glad.
Well, everybody likes those videos where the bully gets knocked out.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't want to see anybody's hands cut off. You just want to see accountability at whatever level that is. This is too much accountability where you're losing your job and your house and all those other hypotheticals you can lose. That's too much. I agree.
So
but
what people don't realize
accountable.
is these loud, squeaky wheels at the extreme push the moderates towards the other extreme.
Well, no.
No.
And I see sometimes it does pull towards that.
I see it.
Sometimes it pulls towards that, and that's how you do get change, because you don't get societal change on a big... It's very rare. It goes from one side all the way over to the other, right?
You're missing my point here.
Okay.
So you've got these people that are looking for villains under every rock, and they're shouting about the Karens. They're shouting about all of this stuff. Okay. Then you've got the moderate, conservatives that say, well, if you're shouting at me, I'm just going to step over here. And then the right wing, the extreme right, are like, yeah, come to us. We've got the answers.
Yeah, but what are those guys shouting, though?
It's divisive.
If it's a shouting match, though, and you're hearing one side, we want to hold these assholes accountable, and one, we don't want to see more black people around. Okay, well, let's decide who's shouting. We need to be gravitating
towards. What if they're saying we want to hold you more accountable? We want to hold these systems of oppression accountable. We want to hold these people with toxic coping mechanisms accountable. Because those toxic coping mechanisms... Oh, this doesn't exist?
I don't know what you're talking about on this side. With the right trying to hold the left accountable for their toxic coping mechanisms.
Not left.
What do you mean?
So okay, you want to talk honestly about it. We could talk about prison statistics being overrepresented by marginalized people and the socioeconomic conditions that allow that to happen. But the right doesn't see that. They say that X amount of crime is committed by X amount of people. Like, let's own our toxic coping mechanisms. Now, the left says, well, it's your fault we have toxic coping mechanisms. Everybody's doing their best to avoid what's actually happening and saying, it's your fault, not my fault. I don't have to own myself. This is on you. And like, yeah, cool. And trying to be in the center and see both sides for what they are makes you a villain to both sides. It does. It makes
only
you
to the extremists, though. You know what I mean?
Would
only
you consider yourself extremist?
No, I don't think I'm an extremist at all. I think I'm relatively moderate, because I know that even what my views are and opinions are, I'm not going to do something extreme in the real world that's going to negatively affect anybody. I know I'm not going to do that. I think of extremists as somebody who is capable of that. Somebody who's you're so far one way or the other, you'll either bomb an abortion clinic or you'll bomb a church that you think bombed your abortion clinic.
Or dox somebody.
That's what I'm saying, right? That's
is that considered extremism?
I do. I understand.
Okay.
I think that's extreme. I think doxing someone in those situations, especially, like the ones you're talking about, fucking absolutely, that's ridiculous.
Like if somebody's a legitimate lunatic
different
and
scenario,
needs to be outed
though, when it gets to a point exactly, that's what I'm saying. You've got someone who's within a systematic structure that is being protected by that, like a church, for example, who's been moved from one clergy to the other, and then finally you've got information on that. Maybe that needs to fucking be brought to light. Maybe that person doesn't deserve to have that anymore because this structure has protected them, and now there's some light exposed on that. And then that's the good I see in this, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, if you misuse any kind of power inappropriately or put it on the wrong target, it's fucking overkill, man. Mm-hmm. I don't need to hit an ant with a hammer. I squish it with the tip of my finger.
See, and that's exactly it.
And I wouldn't do that anyways, 'cause I don't squish ants anymore.
Well, to a person who only sees everything, to a person who acts like a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think these people that are on the far ends of this thing, and don't get me wrong, I'm very familiar with the right-wing lunatics. What I'm seeing is a rise of left-wing irrationality.
I agree. It's again, that's that opposite side of it, right? Well, if this exists, this have to. That's the that's the force, man.
And I considered myself a pretty hard left, a pretty progressive hard left.
Yeah.
But the more of this fringe element I see rising, the more I'm just moving towards the center. Yeah. Because I can see what these people
I think that's where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be, ultimately, ideally, as a society, should kind of be in the middle, and the middle should be more comfortable for everybody as we go along.
I really believe that the call-out culture, the cancel culture, like the extreme, the dox culture, the full-on, like, raging at a university professor for saying the wrong word or not apologizing the way they want, are going to be on the wrong side of history.
Yep, absolutely.
They might be on the right
Absolutely.
side of the cultural change, but their tactics are going to be considered
Absolutely.
toxic.
And give them enough time, they're probably going to get there. They're going to look back on that person like you did as a skinhead and go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad I got here. I'm glad I am who I am now, but at the same time, fuck, why did I have to go through that? But then they're going to learn what they need to learn. Because that kind of shit comes back to you, right? As soon as you start doing, I feel like you start bringing your fucking camera out all the time and you got to get video of this guy and video of that guy. Somebody's going, who's this fucking guy? What's he up to? What are you doing? Well, now you're the one that stops.
That hard judgment guy.
Yep.
You know?
It's the energy you put out. You're going to get it back. And so there's going to be a karmic balance to all of this. It's going to fucking suck. That's why I think people, a lot of times when I talk about stuff, they think that I either like don't understand the repercussions of it when I talk about it like blasé, but I'm like, no, I understand. Like, this is going to be fucking terrible. I understand deep, dark depths of depression and horrible and all that kind of shit, and that's what we're going to experience. And you guys are in for a fucking bumpy ride.
You think so?
I
I would like to think that instead of being anti-racist, we could be pro-equality,
Yeah.
pro-unity.
Yeah. Well, but you've been there though, Pat. You've had breakdowns. You've gone to do the mental work. That's what I'm saying. There's lots of people that haven't, and I'm still working on my shit. And then that's the stuff they're going to go through because it never came easy to you. You didn't have one epiphany other than maybe deep meditation that was fucking just like. I was doing something that came easily to me, and all of a sudden it just like, hey, this changed my life dramatically. It hasn't been right, you know. And again, it's fucking tough because it's like holding someone responsible for something they did years ago. Again, we're trying to hold these fucking people responsible for this shit now. And again, 10 years from now, they're gonna look back. If you're doing this for the right reasons, you're eventually gonna look back and go, fuck, that was the wrong way to do it. I shouldn't have done that.
If I didn't get in front of my past,
Yep.
how many people would be able to dig it up and hold it against me?
Man.
You know, I had to tear my own self open and just expose that. Like, this is who I am. Take it or leave it.
I was kind of embarrassed even this weekend. We're at a birthday party, and one of the fucking I love you. I just want to say that right now. Anybody listening, this is not anger. And honestly, it's funny too because I feel like I was getting warm, but I was like, I'm not mad. I just don't understand. And then that's what annoys me is when I don't understand, and I'm like, well, I want to fucking know what you're trying to tell me here, but I just don't see it that way, you know. And then after we get through it, I feel much better. But anyways, this weekend we're at this birthday party, and this later in the evening, this guy comes up. He says, "Hey man, weren't you in the Sneers?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, fuck, I remember seeing you guys one time at Walker's." I'm like, "Oh yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, I remember there was like this big scuffle, and then you got off the stage." And I'm like, "Oh fuck, I know exactly what story this is." And he's like, "Yeah, you jumped down, you beat the shit out of that guy." And I'm like, "Well, hold on, let's pump the brakes here on that story a little bit." That was I didn't beat the shit out of anybody, and that was a lady, not a gentleman. And I got a bunch of shit for that. Like actually, even like this is probably 07 or 08, and even then I was getting fucking shit on Facebook about that. People like, "Fuck this guy, he punched a chick," and I'm like, "Okay, well, here's the full story, dickheads." So we're playing this fucking show. We're mid-set, and my girlfriend at the time was looking after our merch table. Well, all of a sudden there's like this scuffle happening in the fucking crowd, and I'm singing and we're playing and I'm looking and I see her kind of come up to the crowd and she's mouthing something at me like, you know, like get help or some shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I can't really see because there's too many lights, and she keeps fighting and fighting. There's this great big fucking tall woman, like well over 6 feet tall, fighting her, and she's about 5'3", and they're fighting over this armload of t-shirts, and she's wrestling up to the front. She's like, "She's fucking robbing you! She's fucking robbing you!" She's screaming, hey, and I'm like, what? And so I get down low so I can hear her, and this girl had come up and just fucking stole a bunch of t-shirts off the table and was gonna fuck off, so she started fighting her for it, and there was no door guys around, and nobody helped. Like, fights her through the crowd up to the stage, you know, like dragging her. Well, I gotta get somebody, I know he'll help, I just gotta get his attention. So as soon as I seen this, well, I grabbed onto the t-shirts, and she's fighting with me and go, fucking let go, fucking let go. I said, yeah, okay. Bop, just kind of let go. And as she pulled it, went bang, right into her face. And then she let go, and well, I guess that worked then, right? And then we shut the show down for a minute. Well, I told everyone, we're not going to fucking play if people are going to continue to rob us. Yeah. So you guys got to do something about this and fix that, or I'm not going back on. Anyways, finished the show, and it was fine. And I think he even said, he's like, I think he gave me this t-shirt afterwards, too, because I was going to pay for it. And you're like, well, fuck it, everybody's just stealing them. You might as well take it. Yeah, but then I was like, yes, I had to clarify that. And I was like, I could have just left it, I guess. He could have been like, yeah, it was so badass. You jumped off and beat that guy up. I'm like, well, no, I didn't really. If anything, it's a really embarrassing story for me, but it's like, well, fucking what? I don't know what else you do in a situation like that.
Here's well, this triggered another memory. It was a Halloween memory, and it's kind of factors into this whole social justice struggle thing, where this girl showed up and she had dressed as sexy Hitler. So she had like a real short skirt and like, you know, the fishnets with the garters and like the low cut. But like, I don't even think she had a swastika, but she had a little mustache and her hair was slicked.
Could have been a sexy chaplain. We don't know.
No,
sure.
it was a sexy Hitler. and we all laughed. Oh yeah, sexy Hitler. And that's kind of like, yeah, it's politically incorrect, but whatever. And then this big drunk goon came in and he was like a Sasquatch or a caveman or something like that. So me and my buddy, we're sitting at the back watching the show play, and they're like, "Isn't that our buddy Cash up there?" And what's he doing? He's trying to get the caveman off of sexy Hitler. Well, this guy had got really angry at this woman's outfit for being so politically incorrect, and he started getting physical with her, like throwing her around. The guy's a big goon, and our friend Cash is trying to get this guy off of the girl.
Get him off. He's on his knees.
He turns,
cradle the balls, working the shaft. Yeah.
No.
If you're listening, Cash, I know your technique. I've seen your moves.
Caveman turns around and throws Cash on the ground, and I'm talking to Buddy. I'm like, "Well, you're a kickboxer. You know, why don't you go do something?" He's like, "Not my job." I'm like, ah! So I have to run up and I cross-face the guy.
Not my fight.
So yeah, the Caveman had tried fighting sexy Hitler. Cash tried to stop Caveman. Caveman got on top of Cash. I cross-faced him, and then we got him out the back door. But like, you know, who was right in that situation? The guy twice the size of sexy Hitler who was just... It was Halloween, and yeah, it wasn't the most sensitive thing, but he felt he was doing the right thing. Yeah. But then when he's intervened with, he starts attacking like the authorities.
Well, that's a difference between having a conversation or even screaming at her about how insensitive her outfit is, and that's bullshit, to getting fucking hands on somebody. That's what I'm saying. You start, when you get physical, all of a sudden the rules change. You know what I mean? You're like, no, that's an escalation thing right there. Something more physical is going to happen to de-escalate this, unfortunately. Yeah. One of us is going to have to give up and go away, but it's not going to be necessarily of our own volition. We're going to have to be convinced this is what we fucking need.
Recognizing when things get hot and doing some de-escalation technique, like saying, I don't understand what grooming means.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love you too, man. Yeah. No, it's fucking... that's ranked, though. Like, that's... yeah.
So, next week, I think we got a guest.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
My friend Jen from... Why Choose One podcast is going to come. Her podcast is about BDSM and polyamory.
Are they on like Spotify and iTunes and all the places you find?
I will post some stuff if people want to listen to her stuff. Cool. I'll put some links on the videos. It's called Why Choose One podcast. I think you can find it on Instagram. Why Choose One. So she'll be here next week, and we'll have a conversation with her. We're going to be talking about Dottie Eastman's book, The Ethical Slut. You know, which talks about alternative relationship dynamics. So. That's next week.
Well, and if we get this out early enough, if anybody's got any questions they'd want to ask, try and send it to us. I wrote this down to make sure I actually fucking do this. Like, if you like our stuff, share our stuff, subscribe, it helps us. Plus, and you guys will be up to date when new shit's gonna come out. So yeah, if you can get out there and then communicate with us through Facebook or fucking Instagram or any other shit we got going on.
Message questions, topics of conversation.
Because this is one I'm gonna have some questions about too. It's not really a world I've been in, so I'm interested, and I'll probably do lots of listening on that one too.
Oh yeah, I'll do that.
But it's good. You're always good at explaining shit though, especially if it's not really my world. We were talking about this earlier, and I like that because I hope people at home feel like it's being explained to them then, because I hope I'm asking the right questions that I would want other people to ask. Like if I'm listening, I'm like, well, why don't they ask them about this? I hope I'm saying those things.
Part of my program of like self-work is that whole taking up space thing. You know what I mean? And I do want to listen, and this goes back to that whole other stuff we were discussing. I do want to listen, but at that same token, they should listen to my concerns as well. It's not just a one-way street. So so that's next week. We got Jen.
And I don't want to get into this.
Yeah, we're just gonna go right back into it.
2 more fucking hours. I want to fight with Pat. No, like, share, subscribe, do those things, please. Guess next week, what the fuck else was I going to talk about? Oh, you know what? I just realized what I was wearing when I came in here, and I was like, we should just start doing some little shout outs for local businesses. Right off the bat, a skateboard shop downtown. I think it's Avenue A or Avenue B, right off fucking 19th there. Really great shop. For anything fun to do outdoors in the summertime, they got fucking paddle boards, and they got discs for disc golf. I almost called it a frisbee. Fucking whatever you want to do, it's fun. They got all sorts of fun shit down there. Really cool guys from in the community here. I got my Black Cat T-shirt on.
I think that's 19th Street and A.
19th and A. Yeah, well, I think they kind of like moved around the corner a little bit because they were like on that and they moved around. But anyways,
right next to
you can't fucking miss it. You can't miss it if you're in there. Well, I think it's all kind of the same unit. And then yeah, in the Black Cat Tavern, there the bars are kind of opening back up here in Saskatoon. So if you guys, their fucking food's awesome. I don't know how many days a week they're having $20 sit in and get a fucking large pizza deals, but it seems like every other time I look on Facebook, they're doing that. And last Friday they had punk rock bingo, and that was
they're
really
the
fucking
premier
fun.
punk venue and
Man.
hardcore metal.
If you got
punk.
nothing to do, fucking Sunday nights, they're wrestling on there. Go down there and make sure you touch the doorman. He loves being touched.
The big guy with no fun on this back patch.
No, you'll find out. Just start touching people around there. You'll know which one loves to be touched.
Physical contact.
Yeah. He accepts hugs in lieu of payment.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't do it. Cool. Well, man, I don't really. I had a few other stories I wanted to tell, but I'm gonna save them for another day because the one of them is very unrelated to anything we were talking about. But I think you'd really fucking enjoy it, and I'm gonna save that critter story for later. I think that might be.
There's a few things I wanted to get to. We got a little sidetracked with politics, but we've got enough for another episode. I think we should do another one sometime.
Let's keep it rolling.
Okay, love you too.
All right.
Have a good one.
Bye.